Dr. Sora Kim had seen many strange things in her years studying alien life, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The abandoned moon of Kepler 442c stretched out before her like a gray wasteland, but something was moving in the distance. She checked her scanner 3 times before accepting what it told her. The readings showed massive life forms ahead, and they were young. Sora walked carefully across the rocky surface. Her breathing mask fogged up as excitement filled her chest. These creatures were supposed to be myths. The galaxy called them void spawn, and every species feared them. Stories said they could eat entire planets and tear holes in space itself. But the signals her equipment picked up seemed different. They sounded almost like crying. She found them huddled together in a crater. 3 creatures each, the size of a small building, with dark tentacles that moved like liquid shadow. Their bodies shimmered with colors that hurt to look at directly. But Sora had seen enough baby animals to recognize the signs. These were children, and they were scared. The largest one lifted what might have been its head and made a sound that vibrated through the ground. Sora felt the noise in her bones, but something about it reminded her of a lost puppy. Without thinking, she reached into her pack and pulled out her lunch. The sandwich looked tiny in her hands as she held it toward the creatures. The tentacles stopped moving. All 3 beings turned toward her with what she hoped was curiosity rather than hunger. The smallest one crept forward on limbs that bent in ways that should not have been possible. It sniffed at the food with organs Sora could not identify, then gently took the sandwich from her gloved hand. What happened next would have sent any other species running in terror. The creature began to purr. The sound started low and grew, until the entire crater hummed with contentment. The other 2 joined in, and soon Sora was standing in the middle of what could only be described as the universe's most dangerous group hug. When Captain Hyunwoo Park received Sora's first report, he thought his communications system had broken. No scientist in their right mind would approach void spawn cubs without calling for immediate evacuation. He read the message again, then activated the emergency beacon. Within an hour, every human ship in the sector was heading toward the moon. Sora ignored all attempts at communication. She had made contact with beings that could reshape reality, and they wanted belly rubs. The largest cub had rolled onto its back, exposing a surface that looked like liquid starlight. When she touched it, the creature made happy sounds that registered on her equipment as minor gravitational waves. The rescue ships arrived to find Sora sitting in the crater feeding the cubs trail mix from her emergency supplies. The beings had arranged themselves around her like a protective wall, but moved aside when they sensed no threat from the approaching humans. Captain Park landed his shuttle with hands that shook from fear and wonder. "Dr. Kim, what exactly are you doing down there?" he called through the comm system. "Making friends," Sora replied as the smallest cub nuzzled against her shoulder with enough force to level a building, but with the gentleness of a house cat. Park stared through his view screen at creatures that could theoretically consume his entire ship. One of them was playing with a discarded food wrapper like it was the most fascinating thing in the universe. Another had discovered Sora's flashlight and was batting at the beam with tentacles that could cut through steel. "Are they dangerous?" Park asked, though he already knew the answer would change everything humans thought they knew about the galaxy. "They're babies," Sora said simply. "They're scared and alone, and they just want someone to care about them." The news reached Earth within days. The response from Terra Command was swift and typically human. Instead of forming a military response, they organized a rescue mission. The cubs needed food, shelter, and medical care. The fact that they were reality-warping cosmic entities seemed less important than the fact that they were orphans. Dr. Minho Jang arrived on the next transport with a team of xenobiologists and enough supplies to feed a small army. What they found challenged everything the galaxy believed about void spawn. The cubs were intelligent, playful, and desperate for affection. They learned games quickly and seemed to understand that humans were fragile creatures who needed protection. The largest cub, which the crew had started calling Fluffy, despite its ability to bend space-time, had learned to control its strength around humans. It would gently wrap a single tentacle around someone's waist and lift them into the air for what could only be described as cosmic cuddles. The experience left most people dizzy but happy. Engineer Binu Lee became the first human to successfully teach a void spawn cub to play fetch. The game involved throwing a metal ball across the crater and watching the middle-sized cub chase after it at speeds that left rainbow trails in the air. When it returned with the ball, it would drop it at Binu's feet and wait with what everyone agreed looked like hopeful expectation. The smallest cub, which had bonded most strongly with Sora, showed signs of separation anxiety whenever she left the crater. It would make mournful sounds that registered as minor seismic events and refused to eat until she returned. The solution was simple, if unprecedented. Sora moved her lab equipment to the crater and set up permanent residence with her new family. Captain Park found himself in the strange position of explaining to Earth Command why his ship now had 3 passengers who could accidentally destroy the solar system if they got too excited. The cubs had been easy to convince to come aboard. They seemed to understand that the humans wanted to take them somewhere safe and warm. Getting them to fit in the cargo bay required some creative physics on their part, but they managed it. The journey back to Earth space was unlike anything in human history. The cubs spent most of their time sleeping curled up together in a pile that defied several laws of physics. When they were awake, they explored the ship with careful curiosity. The smallest one had developed a fascination with the coffee maker and would sit for hours watching it brew. Word of humanity's newest passengers reached the Galactic Council through monitoring stations that detected void spawn energy signatures moving through human space. The response was immediate and panicked. Emergency sessions were called. Evacuation plans were drawn up. Several species began preparing to abandon entire sectors of space. Ambassador Taemin received the first official complaint while the cubs were still in transit. The message was from the Zephyrian Collective, and it was not diplomatic. They accused humanity of harboring weapons of mass destruction and demanded immediate surrender of the creatures. Taemin's response was equally direct. The cubs were not weapons, they were refugees, and humanity would protect them. The cubs arrived at Luna Station to a welcome that would have been impossible to imagine just months before. A specially constructed habitat waited for them, complete, with play areas, climate control, and an endless supply of the fish-flavored treats that Sora had discovered they loved. The galaxy watched in horror as humanity threw what could only be described as a welcome home party for creatures that could end civilization. Sora stood in the observation deck watching Fluffy chase a ball 3 times his size around a zero-gravity playground. The sight should have been terrifying, but all she could see was a young creature finally getting the chance to be happy. The other cubs joined the game, and soon all 3 were tumbling through space in a display of joy that sent beautiful ripples through local space-time. They just wanted someone to love them, she said to Captain Park as they watched the cubs play. The most feared creatures in the galaxy just wanted belly rubs and someone to throw them a ball. Park nodded as he filed his final report to Terra Command. The galaxy might fear what humanity had done, but he had no doubts. They had done the right thing. The cubs were home, and humanity had gained 3 very large, very powerful, and very loyal friends. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 6 hours, and Admiral Jin-A Choi was getting tired of explaining why humanity was not planning to conquer the universe. The holographic displays around the chamber showed footage from Luna Station, where the 3 void spawn cubs were currently engaged in what could only be described as the galaxy's most dangerous game of tag. They are not weapons, Admiral Choi repeated for the 7th time. They are children who needed help. The Zephyrian delegate's crystalline form flickered with agitation. You cannot domesticate forces of cosmic destruction. These beings have ended civilizations. Adult ones maybe, but these are babies, Choi replied calmly. Watch this. The display changed to show Engineer Binu Lee floating in zero gravity, while the smallest cub gently nudged him with a tentacle the size of a subway car. Both human and cosmic horror were clearly having fun. The cub was making the purring sound that had become familiar to anyone who worked at the station, while Binu laughed and spun through the air. The biomechanical representative of the hive. Minds clicked disapproval. This behavior is unprecedented. Our data shows no successful contact with juvenile void spawn in recorded history. That's because everyone else runs away or shoots first. Dr. Minho Jiang spoke from his position at the human delegation table. His research had uncovered the tragic truth about void spawn cubs over the past 3 months. We've learned that adult void spawn abandon their young in deep space. Most cubs die within their first 100 years. The council chamber fell silent as Dr. Zhang continued his presentation. The data was heartbreaking. Void spawn cubs were left alone with no guidance and no understanding of their own power. They consumed matter not from malice, but from desperate hunger and loneliness. The few that survived their childhood became the legendary planet killers that haunted galactic nightmares. The solution was obvious once we understood the problem. Dr. Zhang explained. They needed families. The footage switched to scenes from Earth where human families had volunteered to help care for smaller cubs that had been discovered in other systems. 5-year-old Nari Song had successfully potty-trained a cub she called Squishmallow using star charts and positive reinforcement. The sight of a human child teaching a reality-warping entity to use a designated bathroom area was both adorable and terrifying. Admiral Choi watched the alien delegates process this information. Some species, like the Peaceful Harmony Collective, seemed intrigued by humanity's approach. Others, like the Militaristic Order of Cosmic Purity, looked ready to declare war on principle alone. Back on Luna Station, the cubs were growing rapidly. What had started as building-sized creatures were now approaching the mass of small asteroids. Their playful activities were causing minor gravitational disturbances throughout the outer Sol system, but the human response was typically practical. They built bigger playgrounds. Dr. Yoonji Park had been promoted to director of the Void Spawn Research Initiative after successfully designing the first cosmic-scale jungle gym. The structure stretched for several kilometers and was built to withstand forces that could reshape local space-time. Watching the cubs play on equipment designed for beings who could accidentally create black holes was surreal, but oddly heartwarming. The real breakthrough came when the cubs began exhibiting protective behavior toward their human companions. Captain Sung-Ho Bay was conducting routine patrol when a Zephyrian scout ship fired what was meant to be a warning shot near the research station. The response from the cubs was immediate and decisive. All 3 cubs appeared around the Zephyrian vessel faster than the ship's sensors could track. Instead of destroying the threat, they simply moved the entire ship to what could only be described as a cosmic timeout corner. The Zephyrians found themselves in a pocket dimension decorated with what appeared to be crayon drawings of happy stick figures. Let them think about what they did, Nari Song had said when asked about the incident. The 5-year-old had somehow become an unofficial advisor on void spawn behavior. Her insights into cub psychology were more accurate than those of trained xenobiologists. The cubs kept the Zephyrian ship in timeout for exactly 6 hours before returning it to normal space. The crew was unharmed but thoroughly confused. Their reports to the Zephyrian Collective described being surrounded by geometric patterns that smelled like birthday cake and gravitational fields that played lullabies. This incident marked a turning point in galactic perception of the human-void spawn relationship. It became clear that the cubs were not just pets, but active protectors of their human families. The implications terrified many species, while others began to wonder if humanity might be onto something revolutionary. Dr. Sora Kim had noticed changes in the cubs' behavior that suggested they were trying to communicate something important. Fluffy, the largest cub, had begun creating complex patterns in the asteroid field using his reality-warping abilities. The structures looked almost like maps, but maps of what remained unclear. Young Jaehyun Kim, age 12, had developed an unprecedented psychic bond with Squishmallow during a field trip to Luna Station. The boy claimed he could sense the cub's emotions and sometimes even see images that came from the creature's mind. Most adults dismissed this as imagination until Jae-hyun began accurately predicting the cub's behavior. "They're scared of something," Jae-hyun told Dr. Kim during one of their sessions. "Not scared of us, but scared of something else, something big that's coming." The boy's words proved prophetic when deep space monitoring stations began detecting unusual readings from the galactic rim. Dr. Yoona Shin's team was the first to notice the pattern. Something massive was moving through dark space, and it was heading toward inhabited systems. The cubs' behavior became increasingly agitated as the readings grew stronger. They would huddle together, making sounds that registered as minor seismic events. Their play became more subdued, and they seemed reluctant to let their human caretakers out of sight for long periods. Ambassador Tae Min found himself fielding increasingly frantic communications from across the galaxy. Refugee fleets were abandoning entire star systems based solely on rumors that humanity was domesticating universe enders. The panic was spreading faster than any logical response to the actual situation. The breaking point came when a combined fleet of 12 species arrived at the edge of the Sol system, demanding humanity surrender the Cubs immediately. The fleet was led by Admiral Vorthak of the Militant Order of Cosmic Purity, who had declared the human-void spawn bond an abomination against natural order. Captain Hyunwoo Park found himself commanding humanity's first truly cosmic diplomatic crisis. The Cubs sensed the threat and positioned themselves between Earth and the alien fleet. Their presence in space created visual distortions that made them appear even larger and more menacing than they actually were. "We are not your enemies," Park broadcast to the assembled fleet. "These Cubs are not weapons, they are refugees we have chosen to protect." Admiral Vorthak's response was predictably hostile. "You have corrupted the natural order. Void spawn exists to be feared, not coddled. Your actions threaten the stability of known space." What happened next would be remembered as one of the most important moments in galactic history. 5-year-old Nari Song had been visiting Luna Station when the crisis began. She approached the communication console where adult diplomats were failing to find peaceful solutions. "Can I talk to the angry aliens?" she asked. Before anyone could stop her, she activated the broadcast system. "Hi, angry space people. The Cubs aren't scary, they just need friends like everybody else. If you're mean to them, they'll be sad, and sad Cubs don't play nice with anyone." The transmission reached every ship in the fleet. There was a long silence before Admiral Vorthak responded. "Child, you do not understand the forces you are dealing with. I understand they like belly rubs and they get scared when people yell," Nari replied. "Maybe you should try being nice instead of angry all the time." The simplicity of the child's logic seemed to break through the fear and prejudice that had driven the crisis. Several ships in the fleet began powering down their weapons. Others maintained their hostile stance, but the unified front was beginning to crack. Dr. Kim realized this was their chance to show the galaxy what the Cubs really were. "Fluffy," she called to the largest Cub, "show them the patterns you've been making." The massive creature moved slowly, creating a 3-dimensional map in space using controlled gravitational fields. The structure that formed showed star systems' trade routes and something else. A darkness spreading from the galactic rim, consuming everything in its path. Jae-hyun suddenly grabbed Dr. Kim's arm. "That's what Squishmallow has been trying to tell us. There's something out there that eats everything and the Cubs are scared of it." The revelation that the Cubs were not predators, but refugees fleeing from something far worse changed everything. The assembled fleet found themselves looking at 3 young beings who had survived something that threatened all life in the galaxy. Admiral Vorthak's fleet began to withdraw, but the damage to galactic stability had been done. Fear of the Cubs had spread to every inhabited system, and now there was something else to fear. Something that made void spawn Cubs seek protection from the one species crazy enough to offer them belly rubs and bedtime stories. The galaxy was about 6 months after first contact. The human void spawn integration program faced its first major crisis. The Cubs had grown beyond anyone's expectations, and their teenage growth phase was causing problems that no amount of belly rubs could solve. Dr. Yoonji Park watched nervously from the observation deck as Kooky the Cub, named by a 7-year-old contest winner, accidentally created a small wormhole while trying to fetch a tennis ball. The spatial distortion lasted only seconds, but it connected Luna Station directly to the Andromedan snack dispensary station, 40,000 light-years away. "That's the 3rd-dimensional incident this week," reported engineer Bin-Nu Lee as he carefully approached the confused Cub. Kooky was staring at the spot where the wormhole had been making worried sounds that registered as minor gravitational pulses. The tennis ball had vanished into the wormhole, and now some very surprised aliens in Andromeda probably had humanity's first gift to another galaxy. The Cubs were no longer the size of buildings. Fluffy now approached the mass of a small moon. while Squishmallow and Kooky were not far behind. Their movements through space created beautiful aurora effects, but also caused tidal shifts on nearby asteroids. The human response was typically practical, but ambitious. They started construction on the galaxy's first cosmic playground designed for planet-sized beings. Captain Sung-Ho Bae filed his daily report from the patrol ship Guardian while watching refugee fleets flee human space at maximum speed. The sight had become disturbingly common. Entire civilizations were abandoning their homeworlds based on nothing more than rumors that humans had domesticated universe-ending entities. Another hegemony transport convoy just jumped to hyperspace, Bae reported to Earth Command. They detected our cubs on long-range sensors and immediately changed course for the next galaxy over. The psychological impact on galactic civilization was becoming impossible to ignore. 3 separate species had abandoned their home systems entirely. The crystalline hegemony was in the process of relocating their entire population to what they called minimum safe distance from human territory. The biomechanical hive minds had calculated extinction probabilities and were preparing for what they termed reality cascade failure. But for 12-year-old Jae-hyun Kim, the growing crisis was overshadowed by something far more urgent. His psychic connection with Squishmallow had been strengthening daily, and the images he received from the cub were becoming clearer and more frightening. "They're not just scared," Jae-hyun explained to Dr. Kim during their weekly session. "They're traumatized. Something hunted them across the galaxy and they watched their families get eaten by it." The boy's ability to communicate with Squishmallow had evolved beyond simple emotional sensing. He could now perceive actual memories, and the things he saw in those memories made him wake up crying. Vast, dark shapes moving through space, consuming entire star systems. Adult void spawn fighting desperately against something that devoured light itself. Cubs being scattered across the galaxy as their parents made final stands against an enemy that could not be stopped. Dr. Yuna Shin's deep space monitoring stations had been tracking the approaching anomaly for weeks. The readings defied conventional understanding of physics. Whatever was coming from the galactic rim was not moving through space so much as consuming it. Entire regions of stars were simply vanishing from sensors as the distortion passed through them. "It's not destroying matter," Dr. Shin explained to the emergency council meeting. "It's making it stop existing, completely removing it from reality." The implications were staggering. If the readings were accurate, they were facing something that could erase portions of the universe itself. The adult void spawn that the galaxy feared as planet killers were apparently refugees fleeing from this cosmic horror. Young Nari Song, now 6 years old and considered the galaxy's foremost expert on void spawn psychology, had been working with the cubs to understand their attempts at communication. The patterns they created in space were not random art projects but tactical maps showing the approach of what they called the hunger. "They're trying to warn us," Nari explained to Admiral Choi during a briefing that would have seemed impossible a year ago. "The cubs know how to fight the bad thing, but they need help. They need their mommies and daddies, but most of them are gone." The revelation that adult void spawn were not mindless destroyers but desperate parents fighting an impossible war changed everything humans thought they knew about galactic politics. The planet-eating behavior that terrorized civilizations was actually a survival strategy. Adult void spawn consumed matter to gain enough energy to battle the hunger and protect their young. Ambassador Tae Min found himself in the unprecedented position of trying to convince the Galactic Council that salvation lay in humanity's talent for befriending cosmic nightmares. The proposal he presented was audacious beyond belief. Use Earth as a staging ground to rally both surviving adult void spawn and their human-bonded cubs for a coordinated defense against the hunger. "You're suggesting we invite more of these creatures into civilized space?" The Zephyrian delegate's crystalline form flickered with disbelief. "I'm suggesting we help them save all of our lives," Tae Min replied. "The cubs trust us. Through them we can communicate with the adults and coordinate a defense that might actually work." The plan required unprecedented cooperation between species that had spent centuries fearing each other. Human volunteers would need to serve as intermediaries between adult void spawn and galactic military forces. The cubs would act as translators, using their bonds with humans to bridge the communication gap. Lieutenant Do-Yeon Park volunteered for the first test of human void spawn navigation technology. The process involved having her patrol ship temporarily consumed by a friendly adult void spawn that had responded to the Cubs' calls for help. The creature, called Fluffy Sr. by the human crew, could transport ships through hyperspace by essentially digesting them and regurgitating them at the destination. The inside of a void spawn is surprisingly cozy, Do-Yeon reported after her first trip through living hyperspace. It smells like cinnamon and the walls glow with soft blue light. I'm never eating seafood again, but the transportation method is remarkably efficient. The success of the navigation test opened possibilities for rapid deployment of human-bonded cubs across the galaxy. If they could establish communication networks with surviving adult void spawn, they might be able to coordinate a defense against the hunger before it reached inhabited systems. Dr. Minho Zhang's research team made a breakthrough when they successfully decoded the mathematical structures the Cubs created during play. What looked like cosmic doodling was actually sophisticated quantum calculations, showing how reality could be reinforced instead of consumed. The Cubs were not weapons of destruction, but tools of creation capable of strengthening the fabric of space-time itself. The implications were staggering. If properly coordinated, the Cubs could work together to create barriers that the hunger could not cross. But the process required precise timing and the kind of trust that only came from deep, emotional bonds. The galaxy's salvation depended on belly rubs and bedtime stories. Captain Hyunwoo Park received orders to command the first joint human void spawn exploration mission to the Galactic Rim. His crew would include both human volunteers and Cubs, who had agreed to help locate their surviving parents. The mission was essentially a family reunion on a cosmic scale. "We're going to find their families and bring them home," Park explained to his crew as they prepared for departure. "Along the way, we're going to save the universe using the power of friendship and industrial-grade tummy rub machines." The statement should have sounded absurd, but everyone who had worked with the Cubs understood the logic. These beings responded to love and care in ways that transformed their destructive potential into protective power. A happy Cub was a Cub that used its reality-warping abilities to create rather than consume. As the task force prepared for departure, the Cubs demonstrated abilities that even their human companions had not suspected. Squishmallow created a stable wormhole connecting the Sol system to a distant nebula where adult void spawn were hiding. Fluffy generated gravitational fields that could accelerate ships to faster than light speeds without using conventional engines. Kooky produced energy barriers that could protect entire fleets from cosmic radiation. The galaxy watched in amazement as human civilian volunteers boarded transports alongside creatures that could remake reality on a whim. They carried with them humanity's most advanced technology adapted for cosmic-scale friendship, industrial tummy rub machines that could provide comfort to beings the size of planets, fetch balls designed to survive dimensional transitions, treat dispensers capable of feeding armies of universe-spanning entities. Young Jae-hyun Kim joined the mission as the fleet's primary void whisperer. His connection to Squishmallow had become so strong that he could coordinate with multiple Cubs simultaneously. Through him, the human crews could communicate complex tactical information to their cosmic companions. "They're not just pets," Jae-hyun explained to nervous crew members as they approached the first rendezvous point with adult void spawn. "They're family, and families protect each other." The truth about the hunger emerged through Jae-hyun's increasingly urgent translations of Squishmallow's psychic projections, and it was worse than anyone had imagined. The 12-year-old boy sat in the medical bay of Captain Park's flagship, pale and shaking after his latest communion with the Cubs. "It's not from our dimension," Jae-hyun whispered to Dr. Kim as she checked his vital signs. "Squishmallow showed me memories from the adult void spawn. The hunger comes from the spaces between realities, and it eats universes the way we eat sandwiches." Dr. Yuna Shin's deep space monitoring stations had finally gotten clear readings on the approaching entity, and the data confirmed the boy's visions. The distortion moving toward their galaxy was not traveling through space, but consuming the dimensional barriers that separated one reality from another. Entire regions of existence were being digested, leaving behind voids that hurt to look at even through filtered sensors. The adult void spawn shared their history through the cubs, revealing a tragedy that spanned millions of years. Their species had once been peaceful gardeners of reality, tending to the quantum fields that held universes together. But the hunger had found their dimension and begun its endless feast. The void spawn's planet-eating behavior was not predatory, but desperate. They consumed matter to transform it into energy that could reinforce dimensional barriers. "They're not monsters," Dr. Minho Jiang explained to the emergency council session. "They're cosmic janitors trying to patch holes in reality before everything falls apart." The revelation changed galactic politics overnight. Species that had spent centuries fleeing from void spawn suddenly understood that these beings were the only reason their realities still existed. Every planet consumed by adult void spawn had been converted into dimensional reinforcement, preventing the hunger from breaking through sooner. But the strategy had failed. Too many adult void spawn had died in the fighting, and too many cubs had been lost to fear and abandonment. The dimensional barriers were weakening, and the hunger was finally breaking through into their universe. Ambassador Tay Min presented humanity's battle plan to a galactic council chamber, filled with terrified delegates from dozens of species. The human solution was characteristically simple and completely insane. They would use the cubs' emotional bonds with their human families to coordinate a galaxy-wide defensive network. "Happy cubs are powerful cubs," Narration explained to the assembled aliens via holographic transmission from Luna Station. The 6-year-old girl had become humanity's unofficial expert on cosmic psychology. When they feel safe and loved, they can fix broken space instead of breaking more space. The plan required adult void spawn to stop consuming planets and instead work with their human-bonded cubs to create reality anchors throughout the galaxy. Each anchor would be a point where dimensional barriers could be strengthened, using the cubs' natural abilities enhanced by human emotional support and industrial-scale comfort technology. Lieutenant Duyan Park found herself piloting missions that would have been impossible to describe in any official report. Her ship, the Friendship, had been modified to serve as a mobile comfort station for cosmic entities. The cargo bay contained tummy rub machines large enough to service planet-sized beings, along with treat dispensers that could provide nutrition for creatures who normally fed on stellar matter. Mission log day 47. Doyan recorded as her ship emerged from inside Fluffy Sr. after another hyperspace transit. Successfully delivered cuddle supplies to Reality Anchor Station Zeta 7. The adult void spawn there responded positively to our arrival. Apparently, they had not experienced positive physical contact in 3,000 years. The human volunteers who joined the comfort missions came from every walk of life. Professional pet therapists worked alongside quantum physicists to develop techniques for providing emotional support to beings who existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Children like Jae-hyun served as communication specialists, while adults handled the logistics of feeding and caring for entities that could accidentally create black holes when excited. Dr. Yoonji Park established the first interdimensional nursery on a converted space station in the Andromeda Approach Corridor. The facility cared for newly discovered cubs, while their human companions learned to navigate the unique challenges of raising cosmic entities. The nursery's daily routine included scheduled playtime in reinforced reality chambers and group therapy sessions for cubs traumatized by their encounters with the hunger. "They have nightmares just like human children," Dr. Park reported to Earth Command. "But their nightmares can reshape local spacetime, so we've had to develop specialized containment protocols." The breakthrough came when young Narisong successfully taught a group of cubs to sing together. The harmonic resonances created by their combined voices could strengthen dimensional barriers across entire star systems. The music was unlike anything humans had heard before. It sounded like whale songs mixed with gravitational waves, and it made listeners feel safe at a quantum level. Captain Sung Ho Bae commanded the galaxy's first Cuddle Fleet, a rapid response unit that provided emergency comfort to adult void spawn, showing signs of stress. His crews were trained in crisis intervention techniques adapted for entities who could accidentally consume solar systems when having panic attacks. "Dispatch to all Cuddle Fleet vessels," Bae announced during a typical emergency call. We have reports of an adult void spawn in the Kepler sector showing signs of dimensional instability. Recommend immediate deployment of comfort protocols and emergency belly rub equipment. The missions were dangerous but necessary. An adult void spawn in emotional distress could create reality tears that allowed the hunger to break through early. By providing immediate psychological support, the Cuddle Fleet prevented dozens of premature dimensional breaches. The Cubs grew stronger as their bonds with humans deepened. Squishmallow learned to create stable wormholes that connected distant reality anchors, allowing for instantaneous communication across the galaxy. Fluffy developed the ability to accelerate time in small areas, letting human crews work faster when time was critical. Kooky discovered he could generate energy fields that protected entire fleets from the reality-distorting effects of the Hunger's approach, but the entity continued its relentless advance toward their galaxy. Dr. Shin's monitoring stations tracked its progress as it consumed the outer rim systems. Entire civilizations vanished, not destroyed, but erased from existence, as if they had never been. The few escape pods that made it out carried refugees with memories that no longer matched any recorded history. The first direct encounter with the Hunger occurred when a human scout ship equipped with reality anchors encountered the entity's advanced scouts. These smaller versions of the Hunger moved through space like living tears in existence, consuming everything they touched. Lieutenant Do-Yeon Park was commanding the scout mission when they detected the approaching entities. All ships maintain minimum safe distance, she ordered. Deploy Cubs for defensive coordination. What followed was the first successful battle against the Hunger in galactic history. The human-bonded Cubs, working in perfect harmony, created overlapping reality barriers that the advanced scouts could not penetrate. Instead of consuming the barrier material, the entities found themselves unable to feed and eventually retreated. They can't eat happiness, Jae-hyun explained after analyzing the battle through Squishmallow's memories. The Cubs make reality stronger by filling it with love, and the love stuff tastes bad to the Hunger. The discovery that positive emotions could be weaponized against cosmic horror was typically human in its absurdity and effectiveness. Military strategists across the galaxy began developing battle plans based on maximizing the emotional well-being of their void spawn allies. Captain Park received orders to command the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Human ships worked alongside vessels from dozens of species united by their shared dependence on reality, continuing to exist. At the center of the formation rode adult void spawn, carrying their human-bonded cubs like cosmic cavalry, preparing for the ultimate battle. The Cubs had grown beyond their teenage phase and were now approaching adult size, but their personalities remained shaped by human care. They played games that spanned light years and told jokes that manifested as new constellations. Most importantly, they trusted their human families completely, and that trust translated into unprecedented power. Dr. Kim watched from the flagship's observation deck as the combined fleet moved toward the Veil Nebula, where the Hunger was expected to emerge into their galaxy. The sight of adult void spawn and their cubs working together with human crews should have been terrifying, but instead, it felt like watching the ultimate family reunion. Are we really going to save the universe with belly rubs and bedtime stories? Asked engineer Binu Lee as he calibrated the fleet's industrial-scale comfort systems. We're going to save the universe with love, Dr. Kim replied. The belly rubs and bedtime stories are just how we show it. The Hunger arrived 3 days ahead of schedule, emerging from hyperspace like a wound in reality itself. The entity was impossibly vast, stretching across multiple star systems, and radiating wrongness that made experienced spacers nauseous just looking at it. But the human void spawn fleet was ready. As alarms sounded throughout, the final confrontation with the Hunger took place in the Veil Nebula, where reality itself seemed to hold its breath as the cosmic entity emerged from the spaces between dimensions. Captain Hyunwoo Park commanded the largest fleet in galactic history from the bridge of the flagship Harmony, while outside his viewports adult void spawn moved like living mountains through space. The Hunger was impossibly vast, stretching across multiple star systems like a wound in existence itself. Where it moved, stars simply stopped being, leaving behind voids that hurt to look at even through filtered displays. The entity radiated wrongness that made experienced spacers sick, But the human crews held their positions with the stubborn determination that had made their species famous. "All ships maintain formation," Park ordered, as reality distortions rippled through the fleet. "Cubs to defensive positions, comfort systems to maximum output." 6-year-old Nari Song stood at the communication console that connected every human-bonded cub across hundreds of ships. Her small hands moved over controls, designed for adult operators, but her expertise with cosmic psychology made her the natural choice to coordinate the defense. "Okay, everyone," Nari announced to cubs scattered across the galaxy. "Remember what we practiced. When scary things happen, we help each other feel better. And when we feel better, we can fix broken things." The cubs began their harmony, a sound that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously and made reality itself stronger just by existing. Squishmallow's voice carried notes that reinforced quantum barriers, while Fluffy added gravitational melodies that stabilized local spacetime. Kooky contributed rhythmic pulses that synchronized the dimensional frequencies across the entire fleet. Dr. Sora Kim monitored the cubs' vital signs from the medical bay while watching their emotional states through advanced sensors. The young cosmic entities were scared but not panicked. Their trust in their human families translated into confidence that everything would be okay, because the humans would make it okay. The Hunger's first attack came as reality tears that opened throughout the nebula, attempting to drain the life energy from everything in the area. But instead of finding easy prey, the entity encountered something unprecedented. The combined voices of dozens of cubs had created overlapping reality barriers that actually grew stronger when exposed to the Hunger's consuming force. "It can't feed on love," 12-year-old Jae-hyun reported from his position next to Squishmallow. "The happy energy tastes wrong to it, like trying to eat sounds instead of food." Admiral Jin-A Choi watched the tactical displays as the Hunger's advanced scouts retreated from contact with the reality barriers. For the first time in millions of years, the cosmic entity had encountered something it could not consume. The Cubs' emotional bonds with humans had transformed their reality-warping abilities from tools of destruction into instruments of creation. Lieutenant Do-yeon Park piloted her mobile comfort station through the battle zone, providing emergency emotional support to adult void spawn showing signs of stress. Her cargo bay, full of industrial-scale tummy rub machines, had never seemed more important than in this moment, when the fate of all existence hung in the balance. "Fluffy Sr. is experiencing dimensional anxiety," she reported to Fleet Command. "Deploying emergency cuddle protocols now." The sight of human crews providing therapy to planet-sized cosmic entities while reality collapsed around them would have been absurd under any other circumstances. But the strategy worked. Adult void spawn who received immediate emotional support maintained their ability to reinforce dimensional barriers, while those who became distressed created weak points that the Hunger tried to exploit. Dr. Minho Jang's research team had positioned reality anchors throughout the battle zone, each one powered by a human-bonded cub and maintained by crews trained in cosmic psychology. The anchors created a network of stable space-time that prevented the Hunger from using its preferred tactic of erasing chunks of reality. "The entity appears confused," Dr. Jang reported as he analyzed the Hunger's behavior. "It's used to consuming weakened reality, but our barriers actually get stronger when attacked." Captain Sung-Ho Bae led the Cuddle Fleet in close formation with adult void spawn, who were channeling their full power into creative rather than destructive applications. Instead of consuming matter to fuel their abilities, the massive beings were drawing energy from the emotional bonds they shared with human crews. "All Cuddle Fleet vessels report successful comfort deployment," Bae announced as his ships moved through formations of adult void spawn. "Morale is high and dimensional stability is holding." The turning point came when Nari Song had an inspiration that only a 6-year-old could have conceived. If the Hunger consumed things by making them sad and empty, then the solution was obvious. They needed to make the Hunger happy instead. "Can we give it belly rubs too?" Nari asked Dr. Kim during a brief lull in the battle. The suggestion should have been dismissed as childish nonsense, but Dr. Kim had learned to take Nari's insights seriously. "How would we even approach something that big?" she asked. The answer came from the cubs themselves. Working together, they created the largest wormhole ever generated by living beings, opening a portal that led directly into the hunger's core consciousness. But instead of sending weapons through the portal, they sent something unprecedented: love. The combined emotional energy of every human cub bond in the fleet poured through the wormhole like a river of pure affection. The sensation hit the hunger with the force of a supernova, but instead of destruction, it carried comfort, warmth, and the simple message that someone cared. The cosmic entity's reaction was immediate and unexpected. The reality tears it had been creating began to seal themselves, as confusion replaced hunger in its vast consciousness. For millions of years it had consumed universes to fill an emptiness that could never be satisfied, but now it was experiencing something entirely new. Jae-hyun suddenly grabbed Dr. Kim's arm as Squishmallow shared an incredible revelation. "It's not evil," the boy whispered. "It's just lonely. It's been alone between dimensions for so long it forgot there was any other way to feel." The battle transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. Instead of trying to destroy the hunger, the combined fleet began offering it friendship. Adult void spawn shared their own memories of loneliness and abandonment, while cubs demonstrated the joy they had found in human families. Engineer Binu Lee found himself calibrating tummy rub machines for an entity that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The technical challenges were staggering, but the basic principle remained the same. Everyone needed comfort and care regardless of their size or cosmic significance. The hunger's attempts to consume reality grew weaker as it experienced emotions it had never known before. The entity began to communicate through gravitational waves that the cubs translated as confused questions. What was this feeling that filled the empty spaces inside its consciousness? Why did the warm sensation make it want to create instead of destroy? Dr. Yoonji Park established the first interdimensional therapy session in history as human psychologists worked with adult void spawn to provide counseling to a cosmic entity suffering from millions of years of isolation trauma. The session required reality anchors to maintain stability, but the breakthrough was worth the effort. "The hunger is not malicious," Dr. Park reported to Fleet Command. "It's a cosmic entity with severe abandonment issues and no understanding of healthy relationships." Captain, Park authorized the most unusual deployment order in military history. All available comfort resources were to be directed toward the hunger, while maintaining defensive positions. The entity would receive the full treatment protocol that had proven successful with traumatized void spawn cubs. The transformation was gradual, but undeniable. As the hunger absorbed emotional support from the combined fleet, its destructive behavior began to change. Reality tears stopped appearing, and instead the entity began generating new matter to replace what it had consumed. Stars that had been erased from existence flickered back into being as the hunger learned to create instead of destroy. Young Narisong established direct communication with the hunger, using techniques she had developed for working with the most frightened cubs. "You don't have to eat everything," she explained through the dimensional portal. "There are better ways to feel full inside." The cosmic entity's response came as gravitational waves that translated roughly to, "Show me." What followed was the universe's first cosmic adoption ceremony, as the hunger was officially welcomed into the human void spawn family network. The entity learned to express affection by creating beautiful nebulae instead of consuming star systems. Its loneliness began to heal as it discovered the joy of having friends who cared about its well-being. Admiral Choi filed the final battle report with hands that still shook from witnessing the impossible. "The hunger has been successfully neutralized through strategic application of friendship and industrial-scale emotional support. Recommend establishing permanent comfort stations throughout the galactic rim to prevent similar incidents." The aftermath of the battle saw unprecedented changes throughout known space. The hunger became known as Hope as it learned to channel its reality-altering abilities